Well, hello, everybody, and happy Monday on CHLY 101.7 FM. I'm Kathy Holmes, and I am delighted to be your host of Act 3. In today's Zoom booth, I have Blaise Hunter. She is the originator of something fabulous that happened here not that long ago, celebrating women with the Women of Influence Awards. But she's got a whole bigger story to share, and that's why she's here. Welcome to the program, Blaise. I'm delighted that you're part of the program today. How are you?
I'm fabulous. How about yourself?
Well, I'm still living the high life after having such a wonderful, wonderful event. I got to tell you, it was so impressive. And so maybe we should tell our listeners, what are the WIN Awards? Why did you bring them? And let's just break that all down and talk about a whole bunch of groovy stuff.
Absolutely. So basically, I came from Alberta during the pandemic, and I am an author, a human rights consultant, a fertility expert that doesn't help people get pregnant. We'll dive into that later.
You bet. You bet.
And I was just sitting back, and my business took a little bit of a backseat just because of the pandemic. And my role is a lot of events. So, did a lot of education, certification, looking into what's happening on the island. And I noticed there wasn't a Woman of Influence Awards here. And I had won this award in Alberta. So that's why I was like, oh, I think there might be some room here to expand that and really embed myself in the community, as well as highlight amazing people in this area. So that's where the idea first came. But I also run a nonprofit. So we were trying to merge the two ideas together to create a sustainable funding model for the nonprofit, which is infertility and pregnancy loss support. So the two really feed into one another wonderfully, and was able to create such a beautiful initiative for Nanaimo and Mid-Island.
Well, I have to tell you, I've lived here for nearly 14 years, and I had not seen anything like this before. The
Really?
opportunity to raise women up. And I lived in Vancouver for a long time as well. And I did see influence awards and I did see
Yeah.
celebrations of women before, but again, nothing to this caliber and nothing specific to raise women up. So first of all and foremost of all, I just want to thank you on behalf of all the women in Nanaimo
Thank you.
who are right now still glowing in the aftermath of what truly was an extraordinary evening for all of us. But it wasn't an easy start for you, as you pointed out. Actually, at the awards, you had a couple obstacles to get through.
There were a lot. Like, I'm newer, and I'm not known, so it's like, who are you, and we're going to trust you with this,
Yeah.
and what does that look like? And like you said, you've never really seen something like this, so it's unless you're the visionary behind it, you don't see it. It hasn't existed before. So it's
Exactly.
almost trying to paint a picture to people, but they don't see the picture yet, right? And
Yes.
so, it's that creating of a new initiative that makes room but doesn't step on somebody's toes, that's welcoming, but also creates this niche for us. So it's a lot of moving parts. And I needed buy-in, and I needed to convince people that I could do it, So like that initial idea, we got a few partners that leveraged it. And so that was really exciting, but definitely like logistics and people, and I don't have a big circle, and now I do because of this, so that's amazing.
Absolutely.
But I didn't have a big circle of people, so we did this whole thing in under a year with about 8 or 9 people, which is almost unheard of because it grew so big. Initially we thought 200 people, maybe 30 nominees. So when we grew to over 100 nominees and 620 tickets sold, that really expanded our workload. And with only 9 people, it was hard to manage. So that's some of the barriers within that. But I think we did it. We rose above, and now we've set us up for a framework to create more help and support going forward.
Absolutely. And I think, I agree with you. Sometimes when things happen, you don't really understand how well it's going to blossom. It's partially timing. You were here at the right time. Nanaimo truly did need a reason to celebrate. And the last reason that we had to celebrate where it was a big event, was Shine 2022, which was really a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for people to come together and celebrate just being out of the pandemic and doing
Yes.
something extraordinary. And then due to logistics and some other changes and a change of the management, that particular for last year, it wasn't able to happen. And so there was a huge void of let's do something extraordinary. And you happen to be there to fit that bill so perfectly that I can only imagine that this will just piggyback off each other. I've had so many people say to me, "Hey, Kathy, what was that all about?" And oh my gosh, like it was huge, and how much they loved it, and how well it was organized, and how simply magnificent it was that 100 women stood up in front of 640 people and said, and were recognized. They didn't say anything. They were being
Yeah.
recognized by their peers and by other women and by friends of the community. Next year, this is going to be like triple. I have no doubt.
I
Are
know
you
it's
scared?
it was so like
Did
I
you
haven't
realize what you've
even
just bitten off?
totally I have not actually fully processed what just happened actually because you're so
Yeah.
in it to make it
Yeah.
happen that you don't have time yet to sit back and really absorb and process what really did happen and trusting a stranger with their stories, trusting me to say,
True.
come on up here and stand for a better part of 15, 20 minutes. People were standing there in front of people, which is awkward. And we're not really encouraged to do that and own the spotlight and say, I am, and I am worthy, and I am proud of that. And it's okay to celebrate myself. We're very trained to be behind the scenes and humble is good, but also celebration and good pride is great. And that's what I'm trying to change the narrative of what is influence, and it's okay to be influential and say that, right?
Well, and I'd like to unpack that a little bit because influence comes to people in very many ways.
Yes.
What does influence look like to you?
I think showing up, because a long time I showed up externally to validate who I was, and that was the wrong reason. So
Yes,
when you
yes.
show up because you need to be prove yourself and you need to be accepted and validated by others outside of yourself, that's the wrong reason and the wrong why. But I'm
Yes.
starting to show up for me internally, show up for my own unique purpose. And I think that's what shifting influence. We think influence is like you've got to cure cancer. And yes, that's influential, but that's not the only definition of it. And it means I showed up today and I fell down 7 times and got up 8. That's the simplest
Yes.
form of it.
Yes, and I love that some because it's true. As women, we are not very good at giving ourselves accolades. We have a thing where we're supposed to look after other people. It's always about them. The idea of saying, I did something that is really lovely.
Yeah.
We just don't have, I don't think many women have that ability to do easily.
No,
You know what I mean? Like,
I totally hear you.
yeah, yeah. And I also am curious about from that perspective, you know, quite clearly you've had some women mentors in your life that have really shown you the way. Let's talk a
Mhm.
little bit about some of the influences in your life.
Yeah, I think my whole life changed around 2015, 2016. And there was a few defining moments between a few people that changed the trajectory of my life. And the first one was going into a holistic health practitioner. And I battle a rare autoimmune disease, and it affects my lungs where I struggle to breathe every day. I fight to live every single moment of the day.
Oh my God.
And it was very coming to a head then where I've exhausted everything in the medical system and I'm struggling and I'm a new mom. And it was just depression, struggle, and feeling a lack of purpose
Yeah.
and feeling like my life is just death and hardship and trauma and sickness. And so I went to this alternative health practitioner thinking, well, I've tried everything physically. Maybe it's emotionally. And I wasn't open to that before. So it was kind of funny that I came to that on my own independently because no one was really driving that. It was an internal drive of like, maybe I need to explore something else finally. And so I sat in her room and she just looked at me and said, "Oh, you have a rare autoimmune condition where your body attacks itself." And I said, "Yeah." She's like, "Well, do you think there's a link with that and the fact that you hate yourself so much?"
Oh my goodness.
And she said, "You attack yourself with your thoughts every day. Do you think your body's just picking up on your thoughts?" And it was so shocking to me because it was real. Like, I did hate myself. I spent my whole life trying to find approval and acceptance and validation because I didn't feel accepted within. And so to have someone call you on that when you know that internally, but when someone says it and verbalizes it to you, you're almost like, it like shook you to the core, and earth-shattering tears and a commitment from that day forward to say, I accept, I am accepted, and I'm going to starve this disease by loving myself.
Mm.
And so, and that's what the like an actual holistic translation of autoimmune disease is: rejection of oneself.
It's true.
And so, like, from that day forward, I'm still walking out that physical healing and manifestation of it, but I've healed so many layers within internally of the trauma of all those years of telling the story that you're not good enough and you've got to be perfect to be accepted and excel and type A. And those are all trauma responses to be accepted. And the moment I started walking that, and it's been a journey and it's twists and turns, it's not an uphill journey. It's sometimes you fall back quite a far way and then I'm back out of that pit, but I'm learning what that means to really accept yourself, even when someone comes at you and doesn't accept you. When you show up for yourself, when someone lets you down. And it's just been this amazing love journey. And that was the first one. And then there was another defining moment, but that was the first one that changed it for me.
Well, that's a big one that I think that many, many women will resonate with, particularly in our younger years, you know, that period of time when we are, you know, no longer children and we're not yet adults. That young period of our life when, you know, we don't quite fit into this clique, or we don't quite fit into that clique, and we don't quite fit in here, or we don't necessarily have the words or the ability to communicate what it is that we're feeling because we don't really even know. And so I think that a lot of women resonate with that, because what happened to us when we may have had a younger experience will carry forward into us in our late adulthood. You know, I'm quite a bit older than you are, Blaise, and I still remember that feeling of self-hatred. I still have those pieces. And I know so many women that do. I can't think of a single woman that's truly that confident in her skin that isn't giving herself a slap check every now and then.
Exactly. Absolutely. It's
So
crazy.
it's crazy, and it's real. We, you know, I mean, there was a time when our influences had to be so perfect. You wore the perfect dress, you were the perfect size too, you had the perfect, you know, your husband was really a wonderful man who came in, you kissed your two children on the forehead, you popped them to bed, you had dinner on the table. I don't know of anybody that really went through that unless it was something on television.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Right?
not, it's a facade. And same with, we're in this culture where it's like social media and present the perfect picture, but we all know that's not real. And what is beauty and what is love and what is success and what is that? It's not a real depiction of life. And yet
No.
we're chasing this unattainable carrot. And we're trying to like post that and position our lives like that, even though none of us are actually ever achieving reality and this unicorn idea. So it's like maybe we should change the standard of that measure, or the measuring stick for that matter. Why are we chasing something we'll never attain? Why not define it for ourselves? What is influence? Well, aren't we all influential?
For sure we are. Yeah,
right?
absolutely. And I also think that it was a unique way for you to bring this to community too, because you were going out there, as you said, you didn't really know a lot of people. You didn't have a huge following or anything like that. So you put it out there, and it was two friends who told two friends who told two friends and some more. And then on top of that, you said to people, nominate yourself. Why not? Which honestly, for an awards thing, people, I didn't nominate myself. I don't think I would have ever nominated myself.
Right.
I'm very, very grateful that I was nominated, but I need you, like, I know that whole narrative right? The idea of, I will just go out and get that award. Like, I will just go out
Yeah,
and I will just nominate myself because dang nabbit, I'm a decent human being and I should be like that. Just that whole thing is so difficult to come out of
it is.
voices. But yet, did you say, I think on the event, you
Mhm.
said it was like 13%.
10%.
13% of 100 people is a lot of people. That's like 13 people out of
Yeah.
100. Like, that's a number of people.
For your first go. And I was really adamant to push that because the National Women of Influence Awards encourages it. So I'm trying to pull from what they're trying to
Yes.
create. And it's not about bragging and boastful and this negative
Mhm.
connotation around it. I always say, do you have a resume? And most people have a resume. And I'm like, so what is the difference between applying for a job with your perfectly crafted cover letter and resume
Yeah.
of boasting of your accomplishments and your education and the awards and all what you have been on and boards? How is that any different applying for a job than applying for an award? You don't get any advantage applying for the award. You simply put your name in the ring.
Exactly. And that's, I know where I want to go next with this, because
Yeah.
the next question that I got was, who decided? Who, this was some of the most, these were the most relevant questions from
Yeah.
being a nominee. I
Yeah.
didn't win my category. It was an incredibly tight race. There were a lot
Yes.
of unbelievable women on that list, and I was proud to be a member of that group.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the questions that came back to me after I posted my happy pictures on Facebook and all the
Yeah.
wonderful things that happened, who decided? And so, may I just ask that question? There were a
Absolutely.
number of people, I think. Tell us everything.
So we really immediately wanted to create this system where it wasn't biased or impartial, or we could explain and back up what the decisions were made. And we wanted to make it professional and not just who we knew and who we connected with. And so I had an amazing person on the committee. He has a PhD in criminology, and she works for the government, and she does these types of criterias and assessments within her job. So she used some of that knowledge, or most of that knowledge, and created a system. And we had two subcommittees, and she had a rubric
Wow.
criteria, a grading system, and assessment. They told me to not be part of it. They said, we don't want you part of this. And I was like, but this is my baby. I want to be a part of it. But in the end, it's like, it's better for you and for the committee and for the entire optics of this whole
Absolutely.
situation is to keep the face of it, who deals with sponsors, who deals with the nominees, completely separate from the decision process. So I
Totally.
was not privy to any of those meetings, only heard of who was winning. I didn't at all get to assess the stories. I got to read them, but I never got to be part of the assessment. And I think that created a level of professionalism, of impartiality, of neutral, and it wasn't just highest score wins. The groups had to come together, decide, like discuss what scoring per person, not just your top three. It was per person, and then come and sit down and have a consensus on the win. So even if one score was high and one was low or medium, it wasn't just the majority wins here. They had to actually agree upon the winner, and they couldn't break from that until they agreed. And sometimes
Wow.
they had to come back to the table because there was a lot of discussion. And because it was hard, it's a hard thing to do when you've got so many nominees in a category, right?
Absolutely.
So it
Absolutely.
was so
Some of the
fair.
categories looked as though they were a little bit easier because there were less people that were nominated in those other categories, which begs the next question that I have, as far as, did people who were nominated, they nominated for the categories, correct? Or did, and those that self-identified sort of saw themselves in any number of categories? Because I think that
Yes.
there's a few categories where people could see themselves in more than one place.
Absolutely. Well, we wanted diversity within that, and it's our first year. So I was trying to open it up beyond just
Yeah,
maybe your regular corporate awards. So that's why we kind of grew it a little bit of like 11 categories, because it really opened the door. I didn't want trades competing with corporate because it's a very different
totally
entity.
different. Hmm.
And same with STEM. And I really wanted to give room and space for some of these underrepresented careers. And so what we decided upon is that A, we didn't know at the time, but 100 people, we couldn't have 100 people nominated in 3 different categories. That would have doubled our workload to navigate. So we'd made that decision that only one person per category. And if you were nominated by somebody else, they picked the category. And then also if you were nominated in multiple categories by multiple people, we put it back to the nominee to pick the category that they wanted their nomination to stand. So some people were nominated in 3 different categories and they had to decide which one they wanted theirs to stand in. So
wow.
It's really
wow. Well, I have to tell you that even though I didn't win, I felt incredibly special. And I just want to thank the entire team, including yourself, for making sure that every single person that was nominated felt like they won. They really did. You know, there was such a bubble of joy that went on during this event. And, you know, the fact that you brought us all up on stage in our categories, the fact that you gave us all certificates, the fact that Barbara Ann Photography took glorious photos of us all as our takeaway. You know, I really, really think that it was absolutely a beautiful opportunity to stand up with other women. And everyone that I talked to that was nominated feels exactly the same. We all felt really, really seen. And I think that's a hard thing to do at the best of times, but you managed to do it so eloquently, so beautifully. 640 people in the house. To me, that's pretty. Was it 620 or 640?
620 tickets sold, but then we had like our committee or the clippers that were escorting the event staff. So like that would have been 640 in that room, right?
Absolutely. And Shaw, now Rogers, were there. So let's talk a little bit about that. Of course, I have the great fortune of being part of the Rogers family in my Act 3 television program there, but also other programs that I've worked with them on. They are the best people ever.
They were so amazing to deal with. We have a committee member that works for Rogers, and so she positioned that idea to film it, and they were 100% on board. No questions asked. Like there wasn't a pitch. I thought I was going on a phone call to pitch them.
No.
And they were like, absolutely, this is needed and wanted. And immediately it was a partnership. And then we got that confirmation that night that it was an all-female production crew, which is just phenomenal. And
on top of it, yes.
Such an amazing job. And, you know, I think this is an ongoing partnership because it was so successful within that relationship. So kudos to everybody that stepped up and thought, you know, this is the spirit of it. And I think that's touching back to like honoring the nominees and how did we get all this buy-in. And I think as long as I stay true to my heart and the spirit of which I wanted to have, you know, developed within that room, if I can stay true to that, I know it will do that. And the trueness of that is, you know, yes, there's a winner in each category, but everyone is influential. So how do I actually capture that? And that was, I didn't want to do finalists. And I didn't want to say, oh, you're a nominee by a ticket, but your name is nowhere to be found once you enter those doors. Because I've been to awards like that, where the nominee bought a ticket, sat there, and it was like they didn't exist.
Yeah.
And how disappointing. And maybe for jobs and different applications and grants, maybe you have that where that's not needed. But this was not that platform. This platform was about inclusivity, about diversity, about creating a safe space where everybody's welcome at the table and belonging. And so many of us don't feel like we belong, feel shut out, feel like not only there isn't a chair at the table, I never even knew the table was there, you know? And so this was really about a learning curve for me as well, because what is inclusivity, diversity? You know, like what is gender equity? What does that really mean? And I thought I was. And again, my friend, who's a really good advocate and expert in that, originally took my first marketing proposal, and I was like, "What do you think?" And she was like, "Well," and I was like, "What's wrong with it?" She's like, "Well, it looks like you just slapped diversity and inclusivity all over everything."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Well, I kind of did."
Yeah.
And so she's like, "I think we can do more. I think we can dig deeper." So she taught me and many people within the sphere of, what does that mean? What does access mean? What does inclusion mean? It's not just about women. Yes, women, but you know, gender diverse people, non-binary, two-spirit, and gender diverse. What does that mean? Underrepresented cultural groups. how to be inclusive and how to change my language to be welcoming to that group and say, hey, this might be called Women of Influence Awards, but everybody here belongs within that bubble. And so that's what we tried to hang on to the spirit of that. And sometimes I say the wrong thing. I'm still learning. And sometimes I, say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, but I'm here in the spirit of learning, and tell me so then I can move forward, learn, and be accepting. But if I stay true to the spirit of it, then people know no matter, even if your words are wrong, because the intent is right.
So I think you're my sister from another mother.
Yeah.
I really do. I mean, I think that we're learning how to be diverse. We're learning how to, in the work that I do, we have justice, inclusion, equity, and diversity. And as we go through those very important components, I'm learning how to step, not carefully, but step with an open heart and an open mind so that I understand. And then when I'm taught, just like your friend taught you, she has influenced you to be able to be better and show up in a way that makes sense, right, to other people. And sometimes we need those trailblazers to teach us because we don't know instinctively, or we might have not been exposed to different ways of thinking,
Totally.
I think that that's such a brilliant piece. I'm going to segue away from us just for a second and do a quick station identification, because we're about halfway through the program already. There's so much more I want to unpack with you. I think I could talk with you all day. But I do want people to really sort of get an idea. Now's the time. If you've just tuned in, thank you so kindly for tuning in. We are delighted that you're with us today on Act 3, CHLY 101.7 FM, right here in beautiful Nanaimo on this incredible Vancouver Island. Our program goes all the way down to Duncan, all the way up to Courtney, over to the Sunshine Coast. So we are so grateful when you are paying attention to the stuff that we bring you every Monday at 1 o'clock on CHLY, and all the other amazing shows as well. Today I'm sitting in the high point of everything because I'm with Blaise Hunter, who has just done something so incredible on Vancouver Island. But I'm hoping that it's the stepping stone for us to celebrate each other in a much more beautiful way, and do it every single day, because we all have just a little bit of a wisdom to share with the people around us, and we learn so much from everyone.
Totally.
So a good thing to do right now is to go grab yourself a piece of paper and a pen while I tell you what else is happening in community just for a moment. Grab yourself a piece of paper and a pen, because when you do, you're going to want to know how to reach Blaise. You probably have some questions and you probably want to know more. This is a great opportunity for you to write down her contact information. So when we come back to it, we'll certainly give that to you. I also want to let you know that Blaise Hunter sat with me, a few days back, and we did a pre-recording for Act 3 on our now Rogers television program, also called Act 3. You can also find us on YouTube. And if you're watching this broadcast from YouTube, we do hope that you will share. If you like the program, don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, you can hear us on iHeartRadio and on Spotify. So there's lots and lots of ways that you can learn about Act 3. In our community right now, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's going on around the unhoused population. So if it's still a great time to reach out to the Women Helping Nanaimo Women Helping Women, Nanaimo Women Helping Women. That's the first day with my new mouth. It's not working right now. To see if you can bring coats and jackets and anything that you can to keep our unhoused warm. Also, of course, all of our shelters are in need of some supports, including the Island Crisis Care Society, who will also take your donation. So right now is a great time. It's pretty cold outside still. We're not quite spring. So don't forget to help out where you can. We sure appreciate it. Again, I'm Kathy Holmes. I'm your host for Act 3. Back in the Zoom booth, Blaise Hunter. Hi, Blaise. Welcome back.
Hi. Thank you.
Yay! I'm loving you so much.
I love you. This is amazing. This platform's awesome. So thank you for giving that voice.
I'm very lucky because I get guests like you. I'm very lucky that we can share stuff that our community doesn't know about. And the reality is unless we are actually sharing this information, there's a select people that are in our everyday business of living that know about what's happening. And then there's a whole bunch that don't know. So it's always the hope that we can be together and we can share this wonderful wisdom and information with people, and hopefully give somebody a platform for which they can find the assistance and the help they need. So
Yeah,
I'm really delighted to be doing this. So
wonderful.
thanks for being here. I told people to go get a piece of paper and a pen.
Yeah.
So in a moment, we should give them that information.
Okay.
Before we move on to another piece of this, I'm really grateful that you're here to talk about what was done already and hopefully what we'll see in the future.
Mhm.
But the premise behind this being done in the first place was to raise money for something that's near and dear to your heart as well. So how about if we start breaking open what your platform is, share with us your journey, all about your nonprofit, and yeah, can't wait to hear everything.
Absolutely. So I shared earlier a little bit about my health issues and what that journey looked like and the trajectory of my life changing drastically to learn to love myself. And throughout that journey, afterwards, I experienced 3 miscarriages. And that was another portal that challenged me to feel worthy, to be loving of myself, even when I couldn't do what that traditional cultural pressure of being a woman should be able to do. I self-blamed, and it was just this other heavy thing that was challenging me to work through self-hatred. And I wrote a book to heal my heart with no intention of it becoming further than that. And it touched on infertility and loss. And I brought in other people's stories and they shared their experiences. And that was the cusp and the welcoming of a door opening of saying, hey, we need more conversations about infertility and loss. What does that look like for couples? What does that look like for men and women and gender diverse people? And so from that published book called Heroine, Embrace Your Flaws and Own Your Awesome, we created Footprints, Infertility and Pregnancy Loss Support Society. And it's a nonprofit that gives support, awareness, and normalizes this topic, which is very taboo still, even in this day and age. So that was the backstory about that. And it started with me giving a little package of love because I left the healthcare system and I was forgotten about. And I didn't have any resources, anyone reaching out of like, are you okay emotionally? Are you okay physically? Because if I'm not actually like bleeding out, no one checks up on you. No, you know to go to emergency if that. But there was a lot of physical things, a lot of emotional things, a lot of relationship things, how to navigate when you have a 3-year-old. Yes. And you're having a loss and they don't understand what you're going through and you still have to be a present parent. So there was all of these components and I couldn't believe that no one talked about it. It was silence and it was almost like re-traumatizing after I left the healthcare doors. Maybe I was stable physically, but definitely not emotionally. And I think my husband and I both grappled with that. And if I didn't have leaned in and figured out a way to heal, I don't think we'd be married. It pulled us apart and we had to fight our way back. And so that was the premise, was giving something like a bag of love. And I know that doesn't take away the trauma and it doesn't take away your pain or your grief, but it's a softer landing and it doesn't re-traumatize you. It offers a healing platform and a community saying you're not alone, you are not barren, and you have support. And so the book is within the support package because it's a story. It's something meaningful. It's something to connect to. It's saying I'm not the only one. It's not just me. Yes. And so we also wanted to create a certificate of life because, unless you have a loss after the 20-week mark, they're in the system then, but before the 20 weeks, you don't get any record. And most of pregnancy losses happen in that first trimester, so there is never a record. And I don't care if it's a legal record, but it counts. They mattered, they lived in my body, they count. So we wanted to create a certificate of life for that parent to say, we see your baby and we honor the life of that baby forever, how long it was on this earth. Their footprints will ever be on our hearts and mattered and counted. There's a lot of mental health resources, how to navigate emotions, how to coexist, how to actually live amongst grief and loss and pain and depression. Like, how do you live and navigate through that? So some direction. Also, there's nothing for men. And so my husband and I created a pamphlet with hockey analogy, because what guy's going to pick up a pamphlet about low sperm count? Or infertility or loss or intimacy after a loss. So we wanted to create something inclusive for maybe that demographic. So he worked with me on that. And so that's in the packet as well. My daughter and I hand make bracelets with footprints and hearts on them. And it's wrapped around a little card with a little saying on it. And we hand make them, every single one. And she's 10 and she helps me. And just recently learned that I've had 3 losses. And to her brain, she knew that I had maybe 1 loss and she could kind of figure that out. But when I said I've lost 3, she couldn't believe that. And I just like to give her that education and empathy for others. So her heart is stamped on those bracelets. She makes those with me. And so just a bunch of things are added. A local business, Island Wilderness, it does soaps and lip balms in the bags on the island here. We donate that. I give little stones with little sayings on it. So it's just a packet of love. And then we've also created a whole online support group system within that website of resources, of places and platforms to go, of information, of, that you have reproductive health rights. 42, and just in the last 2 years, figured out that's an actual thing. That's a travesty.
Absolutely.
And it's not an issue. Every single human has a reproductive health organ and organ. Yes. And how come we're not educating it like heart health? And so how do you advocate for yourself and have autonomy if you don't know about your own body? How do you advocate for dignity and human decency and upholding those rights within the healthcare system and beyond? Workplaces have no policy. What happens when your employee has a miscarriage or infertility struggles, emotionally, physically? Why isn't there wording or policies on that? And so I became certified in reproductive health rights. So the second component and arm of this society nonprofit is to educate and bring awareness and change policies. So that's basically in a nutshell.
Well, first of all, in a nutshell, wow, and even more wow, because I think that people, there are, I can't think of many women that haven't been affected by either someone that they love, someone that they know, or someone in the media that has had a reproductive health concern, whether or not it's a miscarriage or other
health. It doesn't even have to be fertility, pregnancy.
Exactly.
Issues. There's many branches to that, what that means.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. So first of all, I think people are going to want to know how they can support people. So let's right now give them your contact information. And then I want to unpack some more of what we've just been talking about. So how do people reach you, Blaise?
BlaiseHunter.com, BLAISE Hunter.com. And if you want specifically about footprints, it's just /footprints. But otherwise, it's all in the tabs there, BlaiseHunter.com.
That's wonderful. So people can actually reach out. They can get a hold of your book. Is your book also available in other venues? Yeah. How can people find you in that regard?
On the website, on Amazon, Indigo Chapters, online, anywhere you can. It's available everywhere.
It's available. Fantastic. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to the meat and potatoes, because there's some things that you said that I think are really important. I'm curious about the advocacy piece and how that looks when you're presenting for policymakers. Yeah. How are you being received from a policy perspective? Are people going, why didn't I ever think of that? Because I'm sitting back going, well, that's a no-brainer. Like, why hasn't that been discussed in the past?
Unfortunately, because it's so taboo and shameful.
Right.
And we are already in an uphill battle of gender equity that most advocates are the ones that have experienced it. Yeah. And so there's not a lot of even data, because not many people want to step forward and share about their traumatizing experiences. So in anything to do with reproductive health rights, there is little data still. We're still trying to collect the data, because you have to have someone willing to say it. Yes. That's hard. And it took me a while. And I didn't want to be the poster child of miscarriage, but it became so apparent to me that if I don't say anything, then who? And if we can't change something we don't speak of. And so I found safety and belonging within the community of, and they received it because they would be like, me too. And I found connection with them. And then I got intrigued over human rights. And I thought, I don't know much about actual human rights and what does law look like. So maybe I should educate myself before I take any opinion on it. So I shelved any kind of internal feelings to go learn and be educated. So then I could meld the two together and figure out and navigate what that meant. And so in that time, I appeared on a podcast with a human rights lawyer. And I shared about my nonprofit footprints, which always was an angle of empathy. It was never a human rights component. It was always coming from the heart of empathy and human decency and humanity. And so when I shared about it, she was like, well, that's reproductive health rights. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, no, like it's empathy. I heal with my heart,
Exactly.
And she's like, that's those are laws. Those are laws out there. Like, go check out your laws in Canada. And then as I delved deeper within that, I was able to then get certified with them. There's a great organization in Washington, BC. So I'm a certified human rights expert, and I specialize in reproductive health rights. And I started using actual human rights laws from under the Declaration of Human Rights. There's 30 of them. Eleanor Roosevelt helped create them. And there's a couple of them that are about torture and slavery. And I was able to use those two to really connect it to reproductive health. And say, because in reproductive health, like even in the medical system, if you don't properly equip people for what they're about to experience, when they say, take this pill and go home and expel your tissue, that's your baby. And that language is never shared. That's never actually like shared with you or prepared with you of like what you're about to experience when you go home. And you are traumatizing and torturing parents to go through that with no support, no language, no hotline. You get hotlines of what to do in an emergency of like a physical trauma. What about that emotional component of it? You're not talking about it, equipping people, offering any kind of support network. That is a travesty and against a human right law. That is torture. And then by keeping it in silence, we're also creating this mental health slavery. We're imprisoned to our own feeling that I can't share it because obviously everyone else has gone through it and they're not complaining. So I must be the only one having an issue with this. So it's an emotional prison of slavery that we have conditioned this culture in to not talk about. So that's been received well because I've been able to attach it to real human rights laws.
So I'm curious about how Canada's laws fit with that, because we unlike the United States, and we don't unfortunately have the time to unpack all the stuff that's going on down there, but in Canada we as you said, at before the 20-week mark, there's not any notification. There's nothing. And so when a woman leaves the hospital, they're expected to just go and deal with it with your family, deal with it by yourself. Have you seen a change in the way that women are dealt with in the last decade regarding, because what's available for them besides your organization?
We are seeing change, which is good. I'm seeing more, like when I developed footprints in Northern Alberta in 2018, nothing existed. So I'm seeing pockets of groups like this, but it's often mothers or family members or people that have experienced it to pull it up. There's nothing from government healthcare. It's from the backs of people that have been traumatized, which is good. But now we need help. Why does it have to be on the back of the one that did get traumatized and experience such a lack of support? So we need a melding of it too, but I am seeing growth. I am seeing awareness. I think a willingness and an openness. Like we wouldn't have been able to have an event like the WIN Awards coupled with this topic 10 years ago. I think we're in a phase of acceptance, but we need more. We need more voices. We need more help from leadership, from politicians, from government. We need help everywhere. But I do see definitely pockets of like different provinces creating bereavement leave, creating, the federal government is creating language and money towards pregnancy loss and infertility and miscarriage support. So we are seeing, we're on the cusp of that, but we need louder voices, united voices to keep pushing that, because we're still seeing a lack of support. You get a piece of paper as it stands in most healthcare systems today across Canada, unless it's a stillbirth. They do a little bit better with stillbirths, but still not enough. But if it's a miscarriage before the 20 weeks, or any kind of pregnancy loss of what that looks like, you're given a piece of paper that's been photocopied 1,000 times of what to do medically if you're in an emergency. You do not get a packet of support from emotional or help going forward of what that looks like. It's not in the systems yet. That's what I'm trying to push for.
Got it. And I appreciate that, because I see, when a person is sick, when you're an older adult and you go into hospital and you go into palliative, there's a support network there for palliative. When you go into other areas for healthcare, even with my autoimmune disease, you have a different one than I do, but autoimmune nonetheless, we don't, unless we're, laying flat, there isn't really a lot of support in that other way, but that there are doctors out there that can help you and can support you in some way and lead you to other, groups. So now, there are a couple of things that are resonating with me that I'm curious about more than anything else is when you talked about your daughter and you talked about loss, that bringing those two very important situations together. I'm not sure that I've heard of that being, a reality for people. You think the mother goes home, and rather than share any of that information, we go in the closet and cry on the pillow. Like there's no extra support that comes there. You have done something that's wonderful, and that you brought your daughter alongside, and you're making the love together. You're making those hearts for other people that are like yourself that have experienced this loss. So my curiosity for how the community can support you, what does it look like to you in the way of advocacy, or in the way of conversation, or in the way of support that might help move the dialogue for this to be at the forefront for people to understand the importance of this conversation?
Absolutely. And I think there's a various ways. Well, with the Women of Influence Nanaimo Awards, that was a fundraiser to help us create the bags. I crowdfunded in 2019. That money has ran out. I have done it on my own dime in Nanaimo for the last 3 years. And that's why this has now created a funneling system that I have now some funds to create the bags. But now we need buy-in from different healthcare centers, clinics, victim services. I serve in Northern Alberta. So stuff like that. If you are connected to those kind of organizations, have that conversation. What do we have for support? Ask questions. Go to your workplace and be like, I'm interested in our employee handbook. We don't have anything that really gives language to reproductive health. I was wondering if you'd be interested in having someone come and speak with you and provide some information to how to educate your staff. And whether that looks like a full-on HR overhaul of your handbook, or bringing me in for a 2-hour workshop and saying, this is a family-friendly environment. And what does that look like? Because that is inclusive for all. Every single person that is working here, living here in this world, came from some sort of family.
Absolutely.
And yet we're not family-friendly within our workplaces.
No.
And I want to just bring that, it's not the employee's job to walk into a workplace and then have a trauma of a miscarriage and ask their employer for assistance. Absolutely. That is the employer's responsibility. So it's time to pick up that mantle, move the needle of normalizing this conversation. And it doesn't have to have this huge, thing that you can't, it's so daunting. It's a conversation. It's a conversation with your staff. It's an email saying, hey, we're realizing this is now, we're at the cusp of this conversation that needs more attention and awareness, and we are behind that. And we are a company that will support you in that effort. So what that looks like for you of duty to accommodate may be different for each company, but this is the invitation that it is safe to come have that conversation with us.
I am so happy that you said that because my wheels are already turning on how many different people in our community, that this conversation would be so relevant to help go into so many. I mean, any nonprofit in our community I know would want to have this conversation
Yeah.
because we're already right there. We're already,
Yes.
coming to with empathy and coming with love and coming with, all of those areas that are the root behind all that is being talked about today. And
Absolutely.
the logistics behind it, it's not that hard to make policy change when people start having that, as you said, just a conversation, right?
Conversation. Well,
Moving
it's
moving
awareness
that dial. Yeah,
because people are ready, and it's been
people are
fascinating
ready.
to see the receptiveness of people from all walks of life, men, women, gender diverse. Everyone is ready. They've all experienced that or seen it, or it's like it has affected everybody in one shape or form. And they know that, like, when you're a part of that world, you know the struggle, you know that. And so, like, you wouldn't want to wish that on anyone because it's like this different portals then of re-traumatization, of mental health problems. So why not get it at the root and just offer a little bit of better support at the beginning? And then we stop all these other, bleeding in other areas. We actually
Yes.
just start it when it happens, that we just give the proper support system and conversation and help and safety within that. We have so much conversation about workplace safety, of this, I'm not feel safe in this environment. And we don't offer safety with this conversation. And that's what I'm pushing for.
Well, it's an absolute win-win push, and pardon the pun on that, because it really is a way for people to feel safe in their workplace and safe with them coming into their work as their authentic selves.
Yeah.
Even if I know of a couple of people, myself included, that has experienced loss.
Mm-hmm.
And truthfully, in my time coming up, we did not discuss it at all.
Yeah.
It was a head on the pillow. I confided with you off, outside of this, and it's not easy for me to be transparent about it. I'm one of those people that keeps that part of my life
Yeah,
quite quiet. And part of it is because it's unprocessed loss that goes
it
on
is.
from the way, like, in the past. And so as you move forward and you think about, how to bring those things from under the dark. When things are in the dark, they can't be helped. But if we bring it out of the dark and bring it into the light, it can grow, and we can all be served by it and support each other in it.
Absolutely. And it's suppressed. And like you said, so it sits there and you might have totally moved on with your life. But if you've never worked through that or processed the grief, really, because bearing it isn't processing.
No,
And I can
that's true.
see it. Sorry, I'm just coughing here. I can see it when I just bring it up in conversation. Someone says, "Oh, Blaise, what do you do?" And I said, "Oh, I do this, and I run a nonprofit for pregnancy loss." And someone in their 60s will begin to just bawl, weep, and they don't know how that's even coming out because it was just like a word. It wasn't like I got deep into that conversation. And they say, "Oh, I don't know why I'm reacting this way." I'm like, "I know, because you probably never fully dealt with that. You buried it because you
Absolutely.
weren't given the permission to actually process. And so here you are presented with an opportunity, and that's just emotion bubbling out because it's never been dealt with. And the goal is to not have 30 years of more processing. The goal is to allow you that space. And then for some reason, it's like, oh, I can breathe, and I felt connected, and someone honored me in this moment, and there's healing there. And
Of
that's what
course.
we're trying to do.
And that's what it's about. It's about the healing process. It's about walking ahead, regardless of what your trauma is or
Yeah.
where, I mean, I think that's the learning behind all of this. At the end of my program, and we are at the end, unfortunately, I could go on and on and on and spend so much more time with you. But before we close off the show, let's give people an opportunity to reach back to you and get, how do they find you? How do they touch base so that they can have some of these conversations, and so that they can help assist you to have other conversations in the workplace? What does that for you?
Thank you so much. Yeah, blaisehunter.com. My handles for all my social media are at Blaise the Trail with BLAISE, the trail. Or if you want to connect through the WIN Awards, it's WOI Nanaimo, and it's all connected with one another of what my work is and connecting with me on that level.
Well, you know what? It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the program today. Like I said, I think, you and I could probably talk on and on and on for quite a bit further. I do like to end the show, though, with a piece of wisdom. I think we've had a lot of wisdom throughout the show, but still, if we were to have, if you could imbibe something on the community that you would really want someone to know and to resonate with as we close off the day, what might that look like to you?
A quote from Fred DeVito that I live my life by is, what doesn't challenge you doesn't change you. And that means growth. So lean into the challenge, lean into the pain. Your pain is your gift. So the very thing that you're feeling that's troublesome, or an idea that you think, I could solve that problem. It could be physical pain, it could be emotional, it could be an actual problem solving you want to do. It is your gift. If you're feeling it inside, let it be your gift and give it to the world. So advocate it, lean into it, and turn it into a pearl.
A few minutes ago, well, an hour ago, when we first started the program, you were sharing with you how you had self-hatred. And that was, the cornerstone for the beginning of all the wonderful things that have come out of it. I don't know how it's possible sitting with you in this last hour that you could have ever felt that. Your wisdom, brilliant. Thank you for being on the show today and for showing your authentic self, sharing your truth. You have been inspiring to me, and I know you'll continue to inspire all of our listeners and those who follow your career moving forward. And just once again, thanks for being part of our beautiful city.
Thank you so much.
Very, very grateful.
Thank you.
Well, you got me all emotional myself, doggone it. That's really rare. Usually it's my guests that cry and not me. Well, you got me doing it, dang nabbit. Oh, there we go. Hey, this has been another episode of Act 3. Thanks again for tuning in to CHOY 101.7 FM. We will see you next Monday. Have yourself a brilliant day. Thanks again, Blaise.
Thank you.